left off with the tank getting reinforced on the sides and the bottom, it's now sanded, and I need to mount the tank to the frame. So I need to drill some holes in that tab on the back, one hole in fact, put a grommet in it and attach it to the frame. And then up front here I need to figure out 2 more ears that I can put on to hold that on. But first, let's get the hole drilled back here. So there's a hole in the frame on this cross member right about there somewhere, but I want to be sure I get it just right. I've got the tank bungee corded in place. It's centered up right where I want it. And I've got an LED connected to a 9-volt battery here. If I stick the LED underneath there, it should shine a little light up through that hole, and I'll know about where to drill for that bolt. I just need to get it up in there. There we go. So right about here, looks like a hole about that big right there. When I drill this hole, I'll probably start out with a smaller hole than I need and work my way up to a hole that lines up exactly with that one in the frame. What I'm going to do now is put a paint pen mark here and one right here on the frame to make sure that I put it back in the exact same spot that it is now. And then I'll put one on the side here just to be sure that I get it the same left and right. I can do this right in place on the bike. There's no need to take it off really. The bolt that will hold this in is at 8mm by 1.25, and let's see if that fits in there right where it's at. Probably a little bit bigger than that, but it looks like right now that lines up okay. That's right in the spot. I got it right the first time. How about that? Now what I need to do is drill this hole out big enough to accept a rubber grommet that will sit in there and actually capture this tab top and bottom and kind of sandwich it. Then I'll put an insert into that grommet and then push the bolt through and tighten it down, and the bolt will tighten down on the insert, and I will make that just the right height so that it squeezes down tight but it doesn't squish the rubber too much. That way the tank tab is kind of floating on rubber. Nothing is solid bolted to the frame. You don't want to do that. That's going to create a lot of vibration and possibly fatigue and some break. That can happen to aluminum tanks and cause them to crack. So let's drill that hole a little bigger now and see if we can get a grommet in there. Alright, hole's drilled. Let's see if we can get the grommet squished in there. Get a little flathead screwdriver to help out. Be careful not to tear the grommet. Look at that, perfect fit. Okay, all I need now is a small shim to go in there, a little spacer, and then put the bolt in, tighten it up. The spacer's in there. I've got a 8mm bolt with a nice fat washer on it so that it dissipates the load onto the rubber. But remember, it's going to tighten down, whoops, onto the spacer. There we go, fully tightened down. So the back's mounted up. Now we need to do the front. We need to find a place to put a couple of tabs on the front. Well, it turns out there are some leftover tabs right here that used to hold on a plastic cover that went on this area right here. That's a 6mm bolt goes in there. So if I just put another one of those fiberglass fabricated tabs from here down to there, I can just kind of run it under the tank, maybe reinforce it a bit here in the front, build it up to probably about 2mm thick, and let it go right into this area. And then that will be a nice fiberglass tab that comes down. I can put a grommet and a bolt into, just like I did on the rear. Before I do all that, I need to shim up the tank underneath with some rubber padding that will go on the frame and allow the tank to rest on rubber rather than on anywhere on the frame. And then when I do that, I'll be sure the dimension between here and here is correct. Okay, everything is taped off, and that includes the tabs. And where the tape is right now, I'll just follow that dimension. That's going to be pretty much what the tabs are on the tank. So I need to put the tank back on now, and I can lay up some glass right on top of this tape and then pull it off later. Let's get the bungee cord back in place. That's what's going to hold the tank down nice and tight for me. Make sure it's pulled down real tight against the rubber. I'm going to put this on there really tight. Okay, I can check left, right to make sure I'm centered up just by moving the handlebars left and right and looking at the distance between the top tree and the tank. It looks like I'm pretty well centered up. Everything clears okay. Just by a little bit, I might add, but it does clear. Okay, we're ready to put some fiberglass between here and there. Okay, that's one. So those are on there and curing up, and they are mostly there just to give me a location where the tab is. Like I said, a lot of what's going to happen with this tab will be from under the tank down like that. Got the tank pulled off now, and this stuff's all cured up, so I'll lay in some more mat right in here, between here and there, and build this up to a pretty good thickness. Both the tabs are cured up. I got to shape them now to that line that you see there. That's where they need to be. The tank is mounted up on the rubber. I've got the green LED again. We'll see if we can get that up in behind here now and see just where to put that hole. Get it right behind that nut. It's a little tricky. There we go. Looks like I need to make that hole right there. Okay. The hole's drilled, and I need to punch that hole out to the size of the grommet now. The grommets that I'm using here for this came from a 7 Series BMW V8 motor valve cover job I did, and I saved some extra brand new grommets that came in the kit. And then these spacers are also out of the 7 Series BMW V8, and they have a washer built on the top, and they're longer than I need them, so I can just cut them off to the proper length, insert them into there, and they'll work perfect in here. Let's get the washer in and put a bolt in this thing, mount it up, see how it works out. Beautiful thing. Got both sides bolted down now. Pretty solid, but not in contact with the frame anywhere. It's able to wiggle around a little bit. All right. The tank is pretty well mounted up, so let's move on to the seat tail light. What I figured on this was to just mount it right in here, and the easiest way to do that was just drill 2 holes right there, right in the tail light itself, pull the lens off, 2 holes, lined them up here on the fiberglass. I punched a couple of holes. Then I got down underneath there with a bent piece of wire and a drill bit, and I kind of hogged out all of the foam right there. So a lot of the blue foam is gone. I'm going to fill this in with some fiberglass resin and some fiberglass fibers that I've saved from when I do all that sanding on the fiberglass. Mix up a slurry of that and just put it right down in that hole. Then I'll drill it and tap it for a 6mm bolt. And let's drill a hole. Looks like it's going into the resin part. I think what I'll do is drill one, tap it, get a bolt in it, then drill the other one to make sure I can get it nice and straight. Okay. Tightens down pretty good there. Get the lens in place here and see. It's not bad. There's a little bit of play in it, but I don't think I'm going to worry about that too much. Well, that takes care of the tail light. I've got some epoxy resin mixed up here, and I put a little tiny bit of magenta laser printer toner in it. I salvaged this from a dead laser printer I have. I'm going to pour this inside the tank and then move it all around to coat the entire inside of the tank. That's why I put some color in it, to make sure I can see just where I put it all. To pour this in here, I'm going to make a little funnel out of some paper. And I don't want a chance of getting it all over here, so that's why I'm making a little funnel. I just roll up a piece of some 20-pound bond paper here. Fold one in, unroll the top a bit. And there we go, I've got a funnel that I can throw away when I'm done. Okay, let's pour this stuff in here. This should be plenty. This is about 12 ounces total of resin. Just pour it all in there, every bit of it. Careful not to drip anywhere else. Now that it's in there, we're just going to move everything around. Slosh it around really good. Let it coat everything all over inside of the tank. I can look in there and see that it's coating everything. Go from one end to the other, and I should be able to see it from the outside. Yeah, I can see that it's got a kind of a purplish tint to it wherever it's coating the tank. So this will take a little while, just moving it all around. Take my time, make sure I coat everything inside there. Well, this looks pretty well coated inside now. There's a purple tint to it everywhere I can see on the outside, so that means the whole inside of the tank is coated with epoxy resin, which is good. So I can let this sit overnight now, and tomorrow I can punch the hole in the bottom and get the petcock mounted up. Everything's cured up inside the tank now. The coating is all hardened, and it's time to get the petcock installed. I've got to drill a few holes here for the petcock, 2 for the mounting screws and 2 for the actual tubes that go up into the tank. We'll just go all the way through. It should seal okay. Now I need to tap those 2 holes. That takes care of tapping the holes. Now, one more detail. This is not a perfectly flat surface. It's kind of lumpy bumpy. So this has a O-ring on it. It needs to be against a nice flat surface. So what I'll do is take my router now and do a plunge cut in here just a little bit, referenced to here and here that I've already block sanded flat, and get that down just a little bit where I've got a nice clean smooth surface. I've got a piece of wood on top of the tank, on top of the bottom of the tank. That gives me a nice flat surface for the router to run against. And I've got this marked out, and I've already got my depth set, and now I'm going to router this out for the petcock. I've got a little plan here. I've got some epoxy resin mixed up with some fiberglass fibers. I'm going to put a little bit right in the hole where the petcock mounts. Just enough to seal the other side of the bolt. Seal the threads from the fuel in the tank. I don't have to worry about that leaking through the threads ever. There we go. Next up, we need to get a fuel line on here. This is a 1/4 inch hose, and this fitting is probably metric, 8 millimeters, something like that. I've got some of these spring clamps, but I'm not so sure that they're going to clamp tight on this line. Nope, they're too loose, so I need to get some different ones. But I can always put little hose clamps on there. For right now, that's not going to come off. That's okay. So for the moment, we're just going to run with it like that. Now let's get this on the bike and see where the fuel line's going to run. I'm going to run it out through there and pull it down. Should make the bend there okay. Let's get the tank situated. Yeah, that looks like that's going to work out okay right there. Fuel line is all connected. Kind of hard to reach that petcock up in there. I may do something where I just punch a hole right through the frame here and put a little handle right here that can actually just push onto the petcock and turn it much easier. But that's where the fuel line is going to reside, right there, out in the open air. It'll get a little warm, but shouldn't be too bad. If it creates any issues, I can always insulate it, kind of like it is here with a spring. Put a spring along here, maybe put something around the fuel filter. For now, that works just fine. One last detail, license plate holder. I'm just going to tag it onto the back here on the seat bars, and it will go right there just fine. I already checked it with the seat in place. That will illuminate the plate area just fine. Put it at an angle like this so that it clears the tire. And let's tack it in place. There we go. Let's get the gas cap back on. Put a little gas in this tank. Check for leaks. And, boy, I've been waiting for these words for a while. Fire it up. The fuel petcock is off at the moment. That's it. The gas tank is no longer virgin. It's actually a fuel tank now, not just a glob of foam and fiberglass. All right, let's get some fuel flowing. It's a flowing. A little bit of choke. It's a little cold-blooded. sound like I got all 4 cylinders banging there, does it? Let's check that out. Oh, the gremlins never cease. It turns out that the front coil, when I moved it forward and I made those new mounts, I put the leads on, and one of those little mounts had a piece of metal sticking up that was shorting out the coil for the front 2 cylinders. So, took care of that. Let's just hope the battery's up enough to start. Ready to go for a ride. It runs. Can you believe it? It's actually drivable. How about that? That blue LED for the high beam, a lot of people called it way too friggin' bright at night. It totally blinds you. So I got to do something about that. That's not a big deal. I could change that to a different color. Let's see, what else? The headlight is a Lucas, so it's not that bright. High and low beam doesn't really make that much difference. I need to adjust that a little further out. Obviously, I've got a ways to go yet. I've got to paint the thing, get the fairing on, and I'll probably get it inspected this week sometime, but it runs. I am so stoked. I got a petcock in there, I've got fuel in the tank. It's happening. So anyway, that's about it for this week. Episode 19, and it runs. Looks like episode 20 is probably going to wrap it up with some paint and a trip down the road. So anyway, till next time.
Electric.